You've seen humans in Magic before, but what if every human you played made your entire army stronger? That's exactly what Kyler does best, and when the humans start gathering, the power becomes staggering. Hi everyone, I'm Full Harmonicon and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the broest of all commanders. He gets buff, he spots his buddies at the gym, and before long the whole squad is swinging like they've been training for years. It's Kyler, Sigardian Emissary. And if you love casting a bunch of small creatures, turning those small creatures into absolute units, then swinging in with one massive board, this deck is for you. Kyler is a 2/2 human cleric for 5 mana, and he has 2 abilities. First, whenever another human you control enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on Kyler. Then, other humans you control get +1/+1 for each counter on Kyler. That means every human buffs Kyler, but every buff to Kyler buffs every other human. It's this cool little loop where your board keeps getting wider and taller at the same time. If you enjoy synergy-focused commander breakdowns like this, hit that subscribe. There's a lot more on the way. The strategy here is pretty straightforward. First, we build a board of small humans. Then, we get Kyler online and cast even more humans to pump up the whole team. And finally, we win by swinging in with huge humans that started out looking extremely innocent. Let's get into the meat of the deck. The humans. Taurens, Fist of the Angels, and Silk, Webweaver, both make a human creature token whenever we cast a creature spell. That's exactly what this deck wants, because now every human we cast places 2 counters on Kyler. Taurens' tokens even come with training, so these little dudes pose a real threat as they grow. Adeline, Resplendent Cathar, is amazing here. Whenever we attack, she makes a human token for each opponent. In a 4-player game, that means 3 humans entering at once, which is 3 counters on Kyler and a big buff across the table. Yes please. Champion of Lambalt is one of our finishers. She gets bigger whenever another creature enters under our control, and then creatures with less power than her can't block our creatures. In a deck buffing all of our creatures, she makes blocking almost impossible. Odric, Master Tactician, is another finisher. When we attack with enough creatures, we get to choose how our opponents block, which usually means their best blocks suddenly become their worst blocks. Wild Beastmaster is a scaling anthem effect. When she attacks, each other creature we control gets +X/+X, where X is her power. With Kyler already buffing her, this gets silly quickly. Maha, Guard Protector, gives our board +1/+1, but also makes a human token whenever a land enters under our control, so even our land drops are helping Kyler grow. Cemetery Protector gives us a little graveyard hate, then rewards us whenever we play cards that share a type with Exile card by making a human token. Worm's Crossing Patrol makes 2 token copies of itself when it attacks, which means 2 more humans entering and 2 more Kyler triggers. Horn of Gondor makes a human token when it enters and then lets us pay mana and tap it to double our humans. With Kyler out, this is genuinely bonkers. Call the Coppercoats and Increasing Devotion can create a big pile of human tokens all at once, and each one gives Kyler another counter. We also run some disruptive humans. Talia, Guardian of Thraban, taxes non-creature spells which slows down spell-heavy decks. Talia, Heretic Cathar, makes our opponent's creatures and non-basic lands enter tapped, which buys us some time. Lossanar Captain makes a token every turn, while also tapping opposing creatures whenever one of our humans enters. Next up, +1/+1 counters, and there's a lot of overlap here. Machias, the Lunarch, either grows himself or removes a counter from himself to put a +1/+1 counter on every creature we control. Abzan Falconer is another finisher. It gives flying to each creature we control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Suddenly our massive board becomes a massive flying horde. Talia's Lieutenant puts a +1/+1 counter on each human we control when it enters. Then grows whenever another human enters. It's basically everything this deck wants in one card. Luminarch Aspirant adds a counter to one of our creatures on each of our turns, while Victory's Envoy puts a counter on each of our creatures at the beginning of our turn. Reluctant Role Model is super cool. He can add counters to himself, and if a creature with counters dies, we can move those counters to another creature instead of losing all the work. For non-human counter support, Hardened Scales and Ozolith, the Shattered Spire, both make our counters go further. Whenever we put counters onto something, we add an extra one. Ozolith even gives us another way to place more counters. Now, Kyler draws a lot of attention, so we need protection. Bastion Protector makes Kyler indestructible, which is exactly the kind of simple protection we love. Coppercoat Vanguard gives our humans a small power boost and makes them harder to target. Slippery Bogbonder can be flashed in to put a hexproof counter on Kyler in an emergency. And the cool thing is, Kyler doesn't care about what kind of counter is on him for his buff, so that hexproof counter still counts. Sareth, the Viper's Fang, gives our untapped creatures hexproof. Mother of Ruins can tap to give Kyler protection from any color. Boromir, Warden of the Tower, stops opponents from casting spells for free, but we can also sacrifice him to give all our creatures indestructible. Inspiring Call and Unbreakable Formation both protect our board with indestructible. Inspiring Call also draws us cards for each creature we control with a +1/+1 counter, and Unbreakable Formation can add more counters if we cast it during our main phase. Even our lands are helping out. Plaza of Heroes can be sacrificed to give a legendary creature hexproof and indestructible. And Sajiri's Shelter doubles as a protection spell or a land, depending on what we need. For card draw, humans actually do a lot of work. Lenore, Autumn Sovereign, is the other face commander for the Coven Counters precon. She adds counters every turn, then draws us cards if we have 3 creatures with different powers. Augur of Autumn and Realm Walker both let us play creatures from the top of our deck, which keeps the humans flowing. Esper Sentinel is already good in white decks, but here it gets even better. It's a human, and the bigger it gets, the harder it becomes for opponents to stop us drawing cards. Megara the Diplomat slowly draws cards as our opponents play the game. Outcaster Trailblazer doesn't look like much early, but when Kyler is buffing our board, even small creatures can enter with power 4 or greater, letting us draw. Hylia Ascendant Cadet adds more counters to our creatures, and whenever one of our creatures with a counter connects, we get to draw. Lay to Rest gives us insurance. Whenever a human we control dies, we draw a card. For interaction, we still get to stay synergistic. Cathar Commando can be flashed in, then sacrificed to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Lauren of the Third Path destroys an artifact or enchantment on entry, then lets us and another player draw a card. Witch Enchanter doubles as artifact and enchantment removal, or as a land if we need it. Hopeful Initiate can add counters to itself, then remove counters from creatures we control to destroy artifacts and enchantments. Giant Killer can destroy a creature with power 4 or greater, then come back later as a human that taps down threats. Bounty Agent can sacrifice itself to destroy a legendary artifact, creature, or enchantment. That includes every commander in the format. Normally in green, I love some good old land ramp, but here, every instant and sorcery gets worse the later we draw it, so we're leaning into human ramp instead. Heron Blade Elite is crazy. Whenever another human enters, we put a counter on Elite, and then it taps for mana equal to its power. Catilda Dawnheart Prime turns each of our humans into mana dorks, and later we can put a +1/+1 counter on every creature we control. Avacyn's Pilgrim is basically a Llanowar human that taps for white. Somberwald Sage taps for 3 mana of any one color, though only for creatures. Biophasius taps for any color, and if that mana is spent on a creature, that creature enters with an extra +1/+1 counter on it. Knight of the White Orchid ramps a land from our deck while also being a human. Scholar of New Horizons ramps us by removing counters from permanents we control, which should not be difficult here. Bugenhagen, Wise Elder, taps for any color, and when we control a creature with power 7 or greater, it can also draw us cards. Whisperer of the Wilds and Raucous Audience tap for 1 normally, but tap for 2 once we control a creature with power 4 or greater. finally, a few lands that round things out. Castle Ardenvale lets us make more human tokens. Gavany Township and Abandoned Air Temple both let us pay mana to put +1/+1 counters on each creature we control. Khan's Bastion lets us proliferate our counters. Tree City gives us some extra ramp stable to a land. Kyler is such a bro of a commander. He takes a tribe full of small, unassuming humans and turns them into game-ending threats in just a few turns. He's the deck's engine, payoff, and usually the win condition all rolled into one, which is exactly why your opponents will do everything they can to remove it. So, save your protection. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more synergy-based commander content. If you'd like to support the channel further and help vote on future videos, memberships are available. And hey, if you're picking up any of these cards, consider using my TCG Player affiliate link down below. And until next time, may all your humans be buff AF.